some sort of like benevolent force in Middle Earth, kind of creating his backup plan for later on, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah. He was,
So he
you talk about manipulation. He was more manipulative than anything else, and he was able to twist and turn people to what he wanted. Yeah, and we see that very prevalently when he does create the rings. He knew the rings were going to twist and turn the people that he gave them to. And, I mean, that was his great power, was just, it was like the voice of an angel, but the devil is in the deception.
I think that's right.
Yeah, if you read in the Silmarillion, the very end of it is of the Rings of Power in the Third Age, which gets into a little bit of how Sauron created the rings and the coming of the wizards and things like that. It kind of starts to head right into the. There's a little bit of the Second Age in here too. It talks about the Second Age and how the men started to come, the different tribes of men and things like that. So if you want a good complete like rundown of the early history of Middle Earth, that's a good one. And the Book of Lost Tales and stuff are also good to read for some of that stuff.
Yeah.
And there's also a couple of history of Middle Earth books. I think Christopher Tolkien put out a series of those a while back. So those are also worth your research, folks. Yep. out there in the podcast land.
And the really good thing is, if you all know from the War of the Ring, which lasted years and years and years, way before that you had the War of Wrath.
Yes.
And that lasted from 545 to 587. We have not even been in the war we're currently in that long.
No.
And I can say that because I've been in the war, so booyah. But no, the War of Wrath was like after the War of Wrath was when the Second Age kind of was heralded in a little bit after Morgoth was cast into the void.
Yeah, it's essentially the end of the First Age. It's the end of that battle and the final war against Morgoth.
Right, correct.
Yeah. So the War of the Wrath is basically just this huge... I mean, everybody pretty much got involved. Yeah. Valinor got involved. I mean, everybody... This was like... Morgoth basically got so bad, they were finally like, come on, people, do something.
Yeah, we got to pull it together and face this guy.
Yeah, that's when he had pretty much decimated most of Middle Earth, and people were just in fear and hiding pretty much everywhere. And
he had blackened essentially that whole, because we didn't even talk about the two trees. Remember, there's the two.
Yes.
Which almost that's when the elves were like, all right, enough. We're gonna all unite and go after this guy.
Yes.
And the elves are summoned to Valinor to settle the toll. Eretsia, is that how you pronounce it?
I think
so. Small part of the Noldor and Sindar remain in Lindon, or depart east and establish realms. Okay, so that's after the elves. After Morgoth's cast in the void, the elves essentially newly established the realms and their kingdoms.
Yes.
Which is where we pick up with, I believe, Sauron when he's doing his little song and dance around Middle Earth, bringing people to him.
And it's around this time that two more of the Silmarils are stolen and lost.
Right.
The dragons are killed. Most of the dragons are killed. And Calagon was killed. Now, if you're talking about the War of Wrath, there are a couple different accounts of it. You have the Silmarillion account, but then there's the History of Middle Earth accounts.
Right.
So there are a couple different. It's kind of like, it is almost kind of biblical how you have the different chapters of the Bible and they all kind of mirror each other, but their narrative is just a little different. If you really,
you're quite right. I mean, it's like everyone agrees. Okay, Morgoth is defeated and cast out, but you're right. The road to that. And by the way, and I'm going to totally admit my foggy brain, where are the Silmarils when the smoke clears from and Morgoth is out? Where are the Silmarils then?
After the War of Wrath?
Yeah, are they?
I thought that they did a dragon swallow one of them, and one of them was put into the sky with Beren and Luthien.
The remaining two Silmarils are stolen by Maedhros and Maglor. Were lost in the earth and in the sea.
Okay.
And then Maedhros commits suicide.
Right.
Most of the Beleriand and the lands to the north are sunk. So they were stolen and then lost in the earth and the sea.
Okay, got
now,
it.
here's a question.
I was foggy on that, too. I couldn't remember what happened to these.
No, nor I.
I knew one of them was put in the sky as like a star. That's one of the stars that they follow in Lord of the Rings. I think they say that's... Don't they mention something about like Baron's star or something in
I think
Lord of
they
the Rings?
do.
Yeah. Now here I'm gonna pose this question to the group. They say that one of the Silmarils is lost in the earth.
Right.
And we all know in The Hobbit, the dwarves uncovered a very precious stone called the Arkenstone. I don't know if it's ever been said, but could we not say that the Arkenstone could actually be one of the Silmarils based on its power and what it had done to Thrain and Thror and Thorin?
Are we breaking that story here on the podcast?
I'm posing the question. Could the Arkenstone be one of the Silmarils? It was lost in the earth.
Well, what do we do now? Do we Google that? Do we just let it sit out there? I mean,
Chief, get on this. Google that.
Let me take a look. I'll see.
Find out. That's kind of the same. That is along the same lines as when we broke the story that Sausage Party, the movie Sausage Party, is a zombie film.
Exactly.
I can't even believe I missed that podcast.
Think about it, Mark. So you have Sausage Party, right? This movie about sausages that don't want to get eaten because they don't want to die. Yet they used to be pigs, so they have already died once.
Ow! My mind is blown, and I'm not even stoned.
Of course, then somebody goes, well, what about the bread? I said bread used to be grain, and grain was a living thing out of the ground. They're like,
all right, you've completely messed with me now. I'm going to be haunted by that all weekend.
Okay, so according to the one wiki to rule them all,
one wiki to rule them all, one wiki to find them.
It says that it was discovered beneath the Lonely Mountain by Thorin's grandfather Thor, but then it was shaped by the dwarves. So if it was a Silmaril, I don't think they would try to shape it.
Yeah, I think
the Silmaril would be left alone.
But they wouldn't have known it was a Silmaril. That's the thing, because so many years had passed from between when the Silmarils were lost to when they found the Arkenstone, that it could be suffice to say that the history of the Silmarils was forgotten by all except for a few, such as
they held the power of stars, though, and I would think that trying to shape that would be bad news. I don't know if they would even be able to do anything to them.
But the dwarves were created by the Great Smith and imbued with his powers. So they could have had the means to do it because they were direct reflections of the Great Smith.
Well, if you look at one of those things that just the fact that we can't for sure disprove it means that it is plausible.
It is plausible because if you see it in the movie, the representation of it that they show you in the movie,
it sparkles like stars.
It looks like it's made of starlight, which is how they.
Someone's going to watch this podcast and going to kick our asses because they're literally going to say what the hell, you guys are nuts.
Or there's somebody out there that actually knows exactly this particular comparison, and they're going to just slam us because we don't know.
Bring it on! Just because I haven't read this person's blog about it.
I just looked it up. I looked up the Arkenstone, and there's not a mention of it from what I could see of it being related to a Silmaril. So. I think it's possible. Like I said, the way they represent it in the movie, it fits the description that Tolkien gives in the Silmarillion of the Silmarils. Yeah. So it very well could be.
Maybe it could be. All right,
we're gonna go with that as plausible.
We'll leave that one hanging out there. I'm gonna do some heavy research on that over the weekend.
It's a theory, and it's a good theory.
I will post an answer on Twitter, and we'll talk about it next week.
I dig it.
Most definitely. Oh, and we're skimming through so much because there's just so much.
Well, there's so much. There's so many battles and so many different armies and so many battlefields. Like you've got
the first battle of Beleriand,
right?
The Dagnar Nuen Gileath, the battle under the stars.
Right.
Dagor Aglarib, the glorious battle. The battle of Sudden Flame. The unnumbered tears. The first battle to be initiated by the Noldor.
Yes.
The houses of Bor and Ulfang, allied with the sons of Fëanor.
This is huge.
It can also get really confusing because you've got like the original, you've got the names of like the different. Everybody's got more than one name in this, so you've got
at least more than one name.
You've got tons of characters with more than one name.
I mean, look, Gandalf had multiple names even in the books and even in the film series. And I remember watching the film series with friends, and they're like, "I thought his name was Gandalf. Why are they calling him Stormcrow?"
Well, they've got like Melkor is Morgoth, and like Manwë is got another name. Like the men call him one name by one name, and elves call him by another name. And you got to think about like all the different races. Like Tolkien really thought this stuff out. Like all the different races have their own language, so of course they would all have a different word for God or Gandalf or whatever else they're going to.
Well, he was a linguist, right? So it just makes total sense.
Do you think that was like his? It wasn't necessarily that like he had this world in his head and he just had to get it out. It wasn't necessarily he wanted to write this fantasy thing for everybody to make money. Here's not like kind of like the way authors are today. I want to I put this book out and make some money on this book, get it published. Like Tolkien, to him, that was just a life's passion. He wanted to create this world for himself, and it just happened to get published, and people loved it. That's kind of the way I look at it.
Yeah, and he was in love with language, and if you love language, then you have to love cultures that spring up around language. So yeah, it was very organic, I think.
And you can see that in the book, that every single race in the book has their own different culture and society, especially laid out how the hobbits work, how men were. But he also knew
groups, who they traded with, like which groups didn't like each other, which groups traded with each other. This tribe likes this tribe of elves. It's that complex.
But he also knew the human spirit and everything.
Yeah.
He knew how humans would react to something, how dwarves would react, and pretty much anytime you watch something now that has elves or dwarves or anything, they pretty much all take their cue from Tolkien. I mean, every dwarf you see in any movie is like a miner. They mine things in mines.
Yes.
I mean, you had Snow White and the Seven Dwarves, but whatever, it all came from Tolkien.
That's the thing about Tolkien. He took things from like the fairy stories, like going way back in England's history. He researched all of that, and he just kind of took elements from all these different fairy stories and different cultures in Europe, and he kind of put them all in his own little world.
Yep.
And put it together, which it's unbelievable. Like that's the thing I think that's why I say Tolkien is my all-time favorite and always will be, because I think I don't, not to knock any fantasy authors out there, but I think there a lot of them they're into what they do and they love the worlds they create and everything. I just think that Tolkien just had so much. This was his love. This is what he loved. There is so much of his heart and his love in what he wrote.
I agree.
And it shows more than any other fantasy I've ever read. You can it feels real when you read Tolkien because he wrote it real. He was that good.
That's it. That's the perfect note to summarize this whole conversation. You're
Pretty
right.
much. And I'm looking I'm just getting from this conversation, I can just see all the next Talkin Tolkiens, because we could do entire Talkin Tolkiens on just the dragons of Middle-earth.
I was going to say, I think now that we've done one per age, I think our next thing is to pick, dragons of the first age or of the second age, and then do the deeper dive. Because if you watch all three Talkin Tolkiens back to back, enthusiastic fan, passion, energy, but we don't get into too deep because you can't in an hour.
No. And it definitely, then going in, like you and I, Mark, have always wanted to delve deep into Glorfindel.
Yes.
Well, it makes, I would love to do that too. It makes sense to get into individual characters and stuff too, because
then that's what we should do first.
It breaks it down so we're not trying to cover the whole first stage.
We should now take the next three Talkin Tolkiens. It doesn't have to be three. The next ones, however many, there could be 23, and now make them more granular.
As long as Chief and I are still alive, this will still keep going. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah,
I'm
for sure.
But
that'd be fun. We'll just pick a character or a group of characters or a particular race and focus on that.
Definitely,
I dig it.
Because I'm thinking, we can do whole talks. I mean, first of all, if anybody wants to get more depth into what we've been rambling about, definitely go pick up Silmarillion, Children of Hurin, Lost Tales. Pick those up. The histories of Middle-earth.
The histories are good.
Sure.
Because that's where you're going to get a lot of it, and you'll see how everything ties into Lord of the Rings and the Hobbit films.
For sure.
Especially, you know, you need to
probably appreciate it as a whole. You'll appreciate the whole world that Tolkien created a world from beginning to end.